FSB. FSB.
Hello and welcome to this FSB webinar brought to you in association with Blackhawk Network. I'm Dave Sharp and I'll be your host for this session. I'm a proud FSB member and small business owner. And like you, probably feeling the pinch a little bit and a little bit anxious about the cost of living crisis that we hear so much about. And the cost of living is something that doesn't just affect employees, but employers as well. So that's the focus of today. In fact, I've got some statistics here. We know that financial stability plays an important part in our own well-being. We don't want to be worrying about where the money's coming from or where the money's going to and whether we can afford things. And in fact, just this year in Q1, 68% of employees were looking to their employers for some kind of help and asking for that kind of help. In fact, that figure was reflected because those employers were saying the same thing. So people are asking us what we can do. And we know that if you're supported at work, you'll perform better. You might even be more loyal. You'll probably stay loyal to the firm, loyal to your colleagues and loyal to your bosses if you feel like you are being supported. However, recent research from BHN Extras revealed that the majority of the employers, that's 53%, thought that their employers could be doing more, employees. So that's the focus of today. And the key to success, I guess, is employers understanding what the needs are of their employees and perhaps more importantly, what they can do about it. Because remember, they're feeling the pinch as well. So it's a across the board kind of feeling. So we've got four main areas. I've got them written down here. I'll tell you what we're going to be covering. So how small businesses can support their staff while also facing their own challenges and their cost of living constraints. How your own financial well-being can impact productivity, staff retention, financial stability, things like that. We'll be giving you advice. That's the main thing about today. We don't want you to just be even more worried. We want you to feel hopeful. So we're going to be giving you advice on how to boost retention, especially because we've just been talking about it in the green room about the pandemic. You know, we're still feeling the effects of the pandemic and the cost of recruitment bills, which are still rolling forward. They're impacting our imports. And finally, we'll be giving you some practical tips on managing employees' financial well-being whilst keeping your business financially viable. That's really important. So we've got an expert panel today. I'm interested to hear from them because I'm another one of these people who's feeling the pinch. So we've got Chris Ronald. He's from Blackhawk. He made me laugh. I asked him for a bio and he said his main role is taxi driver to his two children who are in their late teens, and which I think I was putting the strange stresses and strains on my mum and dad many years ago. He just completed a charity mud run. Good to see that you cleaned yourself up, Chris. But more importantly than all of that, he leads the EA incentives, rewards and benefits business for Blackhawk Network. Welcome, Chris. We'll be hearing from you in a minute. Holly Whittles is with us as well. Good morning, Holly. She's director of Purple Frog Systems. There's a big story behind the Purple Frog brand. It's a data analytics consultancy. It's based in the West Midlands, not far from where I am. And she's also the National Policy Champion of Skills for the FSB, a volunteer. Thank you for joining us, Holly. And finally, the Deputy Head of Media FSB, and that's Anna Slater. And today I learned something new about Anna, that she's of French descent, and actually her first language is French. So bonjour to you, Anna. What I will tell you is, don't worry about links. We'll be sending you all of the links and additional information in an email. And I'll tell you more about the fact that one of you will win £150 today. Stay tuned because one of you will receive that via email later on. So that's one of your incentives. You can't chat to us, but you can send us questions. And I know some of you have already done that. So thank you for sending in your questions. If you've got any more, as they pop up, put them in the Q&A, and I'll take a look at those, and we'll get to those at the end. But let's dive straight in. So, Chris, fresh from your mud run, tell us about Blackhawk Network, because I'll be honest with you, before we met, it's not someone I'd heard of. What sort of offers do you give to support small businesses, and what kind of requests are you getting from those small businesses?
Yeah, certainly, David. Thanks very much for the intro. I'm sure I've got something common with lots of people on this call. If they've got teenage kids, they'll identify with my role as taxi driver at the weekend. In terms of I see myself someone who's multi-hatted, which ultimately is very relevant for this conversation. As a senior leader at Blackhawk, I'm here today talking about our products and what we're doing to support small, medium-sized businesses. I'm obviously a manager of people. I have a team of people who are employees and going through the pains that you talked about in your intro, Dave. And as a leader of the business, I've also got the challenges of meeting the drivers for the P&L. So when we talk about that balancing act that businesses have to try and strive to achieve between the economic pressures of meeting the business goals, but also recognizing the impact of cost of living on themselves of individuals and ultimately their staff, it's a tough ask. It really is. And I think, in terms of setting the scene, you mentioned a couple of stats. So we did a survey and created an ebook called Stretch Salaries Further ebook research. And we found that 70% of business owners and HR professionals highlighted the cost of living as the most significant challenge in 2023. Not a particular surprise after the hangover of COVID and the Ukraine war, etc. And as part of that, whilst we all look to address and support our employees better, a stat that stuck in my mind is that 53% of employees actually felt their employers could do more. So we're trying to support our employees. Maybe we're not actually doing as much as we would like to or should be doing. I'll also just share a couple of stats that came up when that people on this webinar registered. There were a couple of questions which were asked, which tie into this. So one of the questions was, how many times a day do you find yourselves worrying about your business finances? So this is asked of all the people attending today. Overwhelmingly, 85% said once or twice a day. 12% said most of the day, and 2% said unknown. So glad to say most were sort of in the middle, but still once or twice a day is pretty significant in terms of concerns around the business finances. Flipping around another way, another question, how do you think teams would feel towards employers if given support with the cost of living crisis? So unsurprisingly, over half, so 57% felt that the employees and the teams would feel far more positive towards their employers if they were given more support around the cost of living crisis. So we're really seeing that those two things coming together, the balancing out between the business doing what they need to do to keep profitable, keep their business ticking along, and supporting the employees themselves. Blackhawk, we are a bit of a secret, but we are sort of coming out from behind the curtain to be a bit more public about what we do. We've been in the business for 20 years, providing rewards, salary sacrifice, and other voluntary benefits to over 10,000 SMBs in the UK. And as such, we're in a privileged position to listen to what our clients are looking for and then be able to invest in platforms and products that are relevant. And we've gone through a lot of change post-COVID to ensure that we are providing solutions that can make a difference to businesses and ultimately the staff they employ.
We hear a lot from the government talking about inflation and keeping a lid on pay rises and that sort of thing, because our first thought is, well, I need more money. But at Blackhawk, you're doing things a little bit differently. You talked about supporting employees. What sort of things do you sort of encourage employees or employers rather to do? What products do you have, for example, that they can tap into?
Yeah, and I mean, inevitably, when you look at the stats, of course, people want more higher salaries, and with the pressures on food bills, utilities, they'll always look and will move jobs for higher salaries. However, we're advocates of there's different ways for employers to support their staff, and ultimately for staff to take control over their finances to make their money go further. So some of the products that we provide through our platforms range from helping fund sort of maybe some discretionary things or higher cost items, such as our salary sacrifice programs for cycle scheme. So that's part of the Bikes to Work initiative, or tech scheme where you can make savings on NI and spread out the cost of buying tech. And again, if you've got kids, you've already got a list of the new laptops or new phones you need to buy. We recently expanded the tech scheme ethos and product to include IKEA as a retail partner, so people can actually use that same mechanic of saving on NI, spreading out costs to buy either one-off purchases like a sofa or other household goods. So those are great ways to help with some big purchases, but also we're looking to help with some of the everyday spend. So products like our cashback card, our discounted gift cards can allow people to make their money go further, whether that's with their regular food shopping, or whether that's with other high street or online retailers. And I think some of the colleagues are going to talk about some of this. We're very conscious that this is about financial well-being and the tie between financial well-being and actually health and well-being, which I think a couple of colleagues are going to talk about. So we're all about trying to help people's money go further. If you've got to spend it, you might as well do it in the most efficient way and help that salary go that little bit further, Dave.
You mentioned health and well-being. We will talk about that. Just a quick question, Chris. Let's imagine a lot of employers are thinking, oh gosh, I've got my own worries and it's coming back on me. So presumably there are some costs involved. I mean, where do they get that money from? How are they handling that through you?
Yeah, and I think one of the key differentiators and position that we took in the marketplace was ultimately we were going to provide a free service to an employer. So if you're running the business, this doesn't have to cost you a penny. What we want to take that barrier of entry to businesses, allow them to open up our products to their employees, and then it's working in partnership with the employers around engaging and driving participation, building up the awareness within their teams and the individuals that work for them. But yeah, the simple message is, good news is there's no check to pay, no invoice coming from us to the employer, which is got to be a winner.
That's made the screen light up for sure. Yeah, Holly, let's bring you in. You're an employer, so you're right in amongst all of this. You're taking action, particularly on well-being, because people. It'd be great if you suddenly got given a 10 grand check or something, but it doesn't always allay the worry, does it? Because Chris already alluded to the fact that these costs are ongoing. Christmas round the corner, something all of a sudden goes wrong, your boiler breaks down and all of a sudden the world falls back in on you, even if you might have had a bit of a windfall from your boss. What are you doing? What can people do, not just to support people with the finances, but with their well-being as well, and to stop the anxiety which clearly it creates?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question, Dave. And everything that I'm trying to do in our business is about supporting the people, because without the people, we haven't got a business. So we have to take into account their well-being. And it's something that I've been really passionate about from the start. So very simply, one of the first things I put in place many, many years ago was private healthcare. And just making sure that all of the employees have got access to the right support should they ever need to use it. And what I've been doing recently is actually evaluating the cover of that private healthcare and looking at what else should I be bolting onto it. So things like menopause cover and dental, and talking to the team about what sort of care do they want, what do they want to be able to access. And one thing I've also added recently is something where they can do a cash plan as part of their private healthcare, where they can pay for things like acupuncture and chiropractic and stuff that generally didn't used to be covered under a standard policy. So it's kind of evolving the framework that I've put in place, but very much talking to the staff about what their needs are and what they want. And right from the start, our business has been about the people. We're a digital business, so I'm very conscious about the fact there's a lot of screen time there. So I signed us up to the Tech Time Out program, and every year they do a Tech Time Out day. I think it's the 28th of November this year. But it encourages people to step away from their screens, go and have a walk outside, take up a hobby, do something that's actually refreshing you as the person. And we're massive advocates for that. And part of our remit is to give them all 15 hours a week to go and do study in whatever they're interested in. Could be reading blogs, writing blogs, attending webinars, going on workshops, whatever it is to fulfill themselves and to make them feel developed. And actually, as a business owner, to give every member of staff 15 hours, that's quite a lot for us. But I see the benefits because they're really then engaged, but also they're learning, and that learning then feeds into the organization and it feeds through into our clients. So everything I'm trying to do is about that employee well-being, but also it then indirectly it benefits the company. And very simple things that you can do is like signing up to the Bike to Work scheme. The government pushed this out and we signed up for it, and we've now got little purple frogs cycling on their bikes to work, and that's helping our net zero and carbon footprint as well, but it's making them healthier. So loads of different things in there. But the last thing I just wanted to touch on was hybrid working. Before lockdown, it was something we were completely against. We were like, no, absolutely not, because of all the security concerns. But actually, we've now embraced it, and we've got a really strong network in place, and we've worked with the staff on what works for them, because we didn't want to 100% have them working from home, because I'm still responsible for their mental health and well-being. And I don't think it's good for a team to be 100% remote, because you still need to have those water cooler moments and those opportunities where you can all brainstorm and work on things together. And also, more importantly, just have a joke about something. So, we've now implemented 3 days a week in the office, 2 days a week at home, of your choice. You can choose when those days are. So that's just a few of the things that we've done in our organization.
I think there's a trust thing there as well. I remember 25 years ago, I was working for an organization, ironically from home, because it was involved in a lot of travel, and I'm based in the Midlands. And if I wasn't at my desk and the phone rang, they go, I rang you earlier. Where were you? You weren't at your desk. You're saying the opposite. You might be ringing them saying, why are you answering the phone? You should be out on a walk. So times are changing. And you mentioned COVID there, and the hybrid working. This is a question off the top of my head, actually, is that when I worked from home 25 years ago, we got an allowance for things like heat, gas, electric, from working from home. It's deductible if you're using a room within your house, because I'm sure somebody somewhere is going, hang on a minute, you're sitting there with heating on all day. Why don't you go to work and sit there and use their gas and electric? Is that something that comes up?
Yeah, and actually, when we had the fuel crisis and all sort of fuel went through the roof, what we did was we actually put extra money into everyone's salary to cover the rise in fuel costs, and no one was expecting that from the team, but they very, very much appreciated it. And we've recently taken on a graduate, and even though we're pretty much close to a town centre, there's no infrastructure to actually be able to get to our office. You'd have to sit on a bus for about 2 hours, which is completely ridiculous. So I'm actually paying for a taxi from the train station to our office for us, which to me is like a couple of quid a day, but it means that we're then attracting that bright young talent and she can't drive, that she wouldn't have been able to get to us otherwise. But for me, I've built that into her package.
Wow. You are boss of the year. I come and work for you.
You're welcome.
It sounds too good to be true. I'm going to bring Anna in a minute, but I just want to quickly ask you, you mentioned some of those benefits. I mean, some of them are perhaps more obvious than others. I mean, I go for a daily walk. I mean, I'm sole trader, so, I have to kick my own backside. There's nobody telling me. But what are the benefits that you notice? I mean, I talked about trust, maybe loyalty, health, but what else are you picking up?
So the main things for us are we're seeing that we've got a high performing team that all want to be here. They all want to work together. So we're seeing the benefits of that collaboration. But then that leads to we rarely have sick. We have there's actually zero staff turnover at the moment. People come and work for us and they don't leave, which is highly unusual. But I think that's because of all these things that we've put in place and because we really care about the staff. And I think the key thing is to talk to them because they're all different age ranges, and things that might be important to me because I'm older might not be as relevant to the younger ones. So you've got to think about all the different types of people in your organization and what their challenges are and build those packages and support frameworks around them. And, then you will see that loyalty and you will see that retention and that reduction in the sick levels.
Music to my ears. I remember the same company I just mentioned. On my 10-year anniversary of working for them, I hadn't had a single day off sick. And I was expecting at least a card or a carriage clock or something. And a letter arrived in the post, and it was a letter saying that please stop using your company mobile for personal use. Unbelievable. I didn't stay loyal to them for very long after that. But there we are. Anna, let me bring you on. You're shaking your head there. You must have heard some horror stories now. For those people,
that's quite horrifying.
Horrible, isn't it? And I wrote back saying, are you serious? I spend a lot of time away from home. I've got to be able to ring my family and say I've arrived safely. And if that's using your phone, anyway, I digress. I'm still bitter about it, which goes back to Holly's point about, people remember these things, good and bad. Let's have more of the good. For those people that don't know, and I know FSB really well, I've been a member since 2011, lots of member benefits, but also you are one of the best, if not the best lobbying organisation in the UK, making sure that whoever's in government and opposition is listening to the needs of small businesses, and you're our voice. So what are government doing, if anything? What can they do, Anna?
Sure. Well, look, costs clearly are a huge problem everywhere at the moment. So what that looks like is quite varied for so many businesses. So for some, the rising cost of stock might be a worry. For others, it might be staffing, and for some, it might be fuel costs. I think it's very clear that different costs are impacting different businesses. But the one thing that we can all agree on is that everyone has seen huge cost increases. But that said, we have laid out several key measures for the government in the upcoming autumn statement. So that's due to come out on November the 22nd. And in that, we are urging the government to make sure, first and foremost, that small firms are paid on time. So a fact that surprised me actually before I came into this role was that late payments cause 50,000 firms to close each year. It's such a huge issue that really needs to be at the very top of the government's agenda. Something else we're calling for is for extended support for business rates. So particularly what that looks like for us is a continuation of the 75% rates relief discount for the retail, hospitality and leisure sectors. That's due to expire in March. But we're also kind of more broadly looking for more people to be taken out of rates. And, of course, a major issue for so many of our members is VAT. So we'd like to see that threshold increased. And that's something that we're calling on the government to do.
And let's be clear on this, it's all right having a wish list and, rallying and banging the door, but government does listen. It's a powerful voice that FSB has, and others, we're not the only ones, but they do consult, don't they? And the good thing about FSB is that FSB consults with its members, i.e. sole traders, small business owners, and we're the ones who are feeling the pinch probably more than anyone, so we can feed that in. But the government does listen, and you've got examples where they have actually made changes, haven't they, on some of those things?
Yeah, so earlier this year, we lobbied quite hard on the energy crisis. So we were able to make sure that various measures were put in place in order to help businesses. So a lot of energy firms listen to our calls to allow people to what we call blend and extend their contracts. So what that means is allowing those who secured their contracts during the peak of the energy crisis to edit those contracts for lack of a better word, in order to take advantage of the lower wholesale prices. So that's something that we're particularly proud of.
Brilliant. And we know that government is getting the message that small businesses are the backbone of the British and UK economy, and that's something I know that you drive home. So what else is FSB doing?
Yeah, sure. So let's talk numbers for a moment then. So inflation has seen a dip of 6.7%. That's of last week. But to be brutally honest, that is not much of a reduction. That's not the kind of levels that we would expect to see at this stage. And of course, interest rates are an issue. So interest rates are currently at 5.25%. And they're not figures that we're quietly noting. We have been actively vocal, whether that's in the media, which is something that I have direct involvement in, or in conversations with the government officials, or even the Bank of England. We're not shy about emphasising how difficult it is, and we can't really discuss that without discussing cash flow. So that's very much connected to several key areas that we are speaking to government about, and that goes back to the autumn statement point I mentioned earlier. So quicker payments and enhanced business rates, for instance, they are all so vital in keeping that cash rolling in. But I just want to go back to my original point about VAT as well. So that's such a big thing for so many of our members. At the moment, businesses start paying VAT once their turnover hits 80. And it is unbelievable, and something that still surprises me, that so many businesses actually feel forced to stop trading as soon as their takings reach £84,000. And that's just to sidestep a hefty bill. So that's why at FSB, we are pushing to raise that threshold to 100,000. And we'd also like to see what's called a sort of smoothing mechanism. So that would mean that if your business goes over £100,000, you're not going to suddenly be clobbered with just a massive hefty bill, because that's going to leave you reeling. It would create sort of a bit of a grace period and ease you into it.
And that figure's been at 85 for as long as I can remember. It's crazy when you think of the inflation rate. That it probably should be double that when you look at how far we've come inflation-wise. But
exactly.
Well, good. That's music to my ears as well, that you're lobbying on that behalf. Chris, to bring you back in, the cost of recruitment, and I'm guessing any business owner would know this, getting the right person, and the cost of recruitment, whichever route you go down, it can be really expensive. So people want to retain staff, but staff do resign for a variety of reasons. What are you finding from your research?
Firstly, I'd better say, if we could can what Holly's doing and package that up, then there wouldn't be a problem with retaining staff and creating loyalty. So great to hear all the great initiatives you do with your team, Holly. Clearly creates a really positive culture. Unfortunately, what we are hearing is that businesses are still leaving people, losing people. We heard about the Great Resignation. And in our research, they're saying, well, we're still losing more people than we'd expect to versus previous trends. So it's a very, very real problem, keeping talent that you've invested in, the impact on other people and the impact on the overall culture of the organization, and the real cost of bringing someone in, retraining them, getting them up to speed. I think, if I try and tie in maybe some of the things that Holly was touching on, and typically where we support companies. Now, one way of looking at it is the employee value proposition. So whether it's somebody looking to join a company or somebody looking to stay with that company, so recruiting or retain them, building loyalty, there's the obvious components that that we all look for. We look for the right compensation, the right package. Nowadays obviously includes base salary and maybe pension contribution. We look for work environment, and that's changed massively. It used to be an office. Can I get there? Can I get home? Now is it 2 days in the office, 3 days in the office? Is it remote? Is it virtual? So that, and the expectations of that has changed dramatically. We've probably recruited more people, who are over 100 miles away from the office than we have in the last 5 years in terms of distance. So work environment's important. Career opportunities and progression is, again, obviously something that people look for. But what we're seeing is the rise of two things. One, of the overall culture. Individuals, whether staying or looking to join a company, really trying to tap into what is the culture of the business that I'm engaging with and might be employed by. So Glassdoor did a survey, and they came up the stat that 77% of job seekers take company's culture into account before they even actually apply. That's an incredibly sort of powerful message to take away about how you're representing yourself, not just to current employees, but to future ones. And then other things in our world, increasingly with the expectation of what an employer is going to do for you on top of your salary, employees are looking a lot closer at other benefits. When I first started working, a benefit was I had an hour for lunch. I could go down and get a sandwich and come back and work really hard for the rest of the day. Nowadays, as we said, so there's a whole range of different benefits, whether it's healthcare, other voluntary benefits, cashback cards, discounted gift cards, salary sacrifice. But those are very real things that employees are looking for, with over a third of their sort of decision-making criteria around what are the extras the company is going to give to me, and therefore attract me to join.
I mean, you're right that there has been massive improvements, certainly since I was working. One of the reasons I went self-employed is because I thought, well, I can reward myself. I can pick my own hours. I can, choose when I go for a walk. And if employers are now thinking in that way and thinking, okay, if these people, this is what they want, is this what they're telling us? But if people are making those decisions before they even apply for jobs, it's important, isn't it, that the company brand, the company culture is portrayed in such a way. I was quite surprised, especially amongst younger people coming into the job market, about what they look for in terms of culture. What's their environmental policy? What's their flexibility? Can I take time off to go traveling? And what about paternity leave, maternity leave? We talked about menopause. How am I supported in the workplace? Chris, there must be a long, long list that employees and future employers are asking for. But I mean, at some point, there's got to be a cap on that, isn't there? Because sometimes employers go, well, hang on a minute, I've got to make a profit here.
Yeah, and I think, the reality is, in the age that we live in, and some of the changes, the macro and the micro changes in the world that we now work in, the expectations of employees are so much higher, and they are very different, as you say. A lot of young graduates, coming out of university, really are looking for organizations that are committed to sustainability. But if you've got a young family, going through life at the moment with your mortgage rate increasing, gas, electricity bills still high, well, what's top of mind for you is, how can your salary go further? And at Christmas, do you want your boss to give you a box of chocolates and a bottle of champagne? Or actually, would you like them to give you, something more substantial to help you to buy the Christmas turkey for the family, or to help you get gifts for the kids? So, it is more complex, no doubt about it. An employer today juggling the pressures of the business and juggling the expectation of employees, it is tough. And I think what I hear, Holly's a great example, because you've really embraced, what's going on, taken your own stance, and you've built it into the culture. And I think what I heard is, yes, I'm trying to give to support the employees, but actually I get it back. I get high performance. I get loyalty. So maybe as employers, we all need to think of it not as a cost and a drain. Actually, this is the way that you run a successful business in these day and age, by engaging employees in this way. So Holly's the case study for today.
Yeah, it's very much. Let's put you back on the spot, Holly, because you are becoming a case study. Actually, I'll just digress a little bit. I'm sure my accountant said to me, as a sole trader, he said, you're allowed to give yourself a gift. And it's tax-free up to a certain amount. I can't remember. Someone will have to look it up. I mean, you must have done that research, Holly. What can I actually give that's, that's not going to cost me a lot? That there's a threshold on tax. But whether that's through an actual thing that you give them, like you mentioned there, a box of chocolates and a bottle of wine up to the value of, or whether it's days out or family treats or staff training. What sort of things are you trying, and you mentioned you don't get, nobody leaves, but what reasons would they give for leaving if they did leave?
Yeah, so I mean, there's so many things in that, and we're always looking at their remuneration and their salary in this ever sort of changing job market. So we're making sure that we give pay rises, but things like bonuses. We spoke to them last time. Do you want a bonus, or do you want a tech gift? Because obviously you get taxed on a bonus. And actually they chose tech gifts, so we were all buying them PlayStations and headsets and all sorts of things, but that's what they wanted. So I think it is that two-way communication, but we very much value investing in our staff from a training point of view. And as you know, I champion apprenticeships and skills for the FSB because it's just a great way of giving back to your workforce, because apprenticeships aren't just for the young leavers out of education. You can use them for your existing employees to upskill them. And it's something that I did myself. I wanted to do a management qualification. So I went back to school and I did an apprenticeship in my own business, which I wasn't quite sure who I was reporting to at that point. But anyway, it meant that I was upskilling myself and I got a great HR qualification out of it. But I've used it with the team as well. There was a young graduate who came to us, and actually she wasn't a graduate at that point. She'd done her A-level, and she literally came straight to work for us. So first thing I did was put her on apprenticeship to make sure that she had some really good qualifications, but also so she learnt what she needed to do to be able to do her job. She finished that. And then I was talking to her, what next? And I said, you haven't got a university degree or anything equivalent. Do you want to do a degree apprenticeship? And she's like, okay. So she's now signed on to a 4-year degree apprenticeship. But the benefit to us is that we've definitely got her for another 4 years while she does that. And at the end of it, she comes out with a qualification. Everyone's happy. So it is that two-way communication that's linking it all together, because the two, for me, are very much hand in hand.
Still trying to get my head around the word apprentice, because I was an apprentice at the age of 16, and back in my day, that's what you did. You became an apprentice as a young person, and the fact that now you can be an apprentice at any age, that probably still for some people of a certain age, me, wouldn't think of going down that route. But one thing that is refreshing as well is that some people are being given money, are told to spend it on certain things like training. I got an inquiry the other day. I do public speaking coaching, and someone said, oh, I've got this money. How many sessions can I get with you, Dave? Because, rather than doing a degree or something that you get a certificate for, I actually want to perform better. And that's just one example. And I'm assuming, Holly, you get similar requests. People just want to be better at a certain thing rather than getting a cap and gown moment at the end of it all.
Yeah, definitely. And that's why I'm very much always looking at what's coming out of things like the growth hubs. Their role is about business support and what are the local authority doing. So I've signed various different staff members up to different things depending on what they need for their job. Some of which are a half-day course, some of it's just a workshop, some of it's a longer qualification. But I think it's about encouraging that learning culture and sort of giving back.
Chris, I think I know the answer to this, but you're bound to say, I would think, that more young, some small firms, small businesses of all sizes should be doing perhaps a little bit more, to get these trivial benefits across to people.
Yeah, I think, the reality is that large enterprises and global brands, they've got big teams of resources who can invest in work out the best set of benefits or incentives or tools, whatever it is for the employees. It is tougher as a small business, but there is, there's more things on offer, than there have been in the past. There's more things that are accessible, they're easier to set up, they're easier to implement, they're easier to contract if you have to contract, or they come without any fees. So there's definitely more choice for small businesses, to embrace and then offer to their employees than there have been in the past, most definitely. And I think it's always a blend so many different things, some of the things around career development and access to training, encouraging time off. I think there was a question about mental health. We've tried to do that as well, where we called it #time for me. So it's the idea, don't just sit at your computer at home doing 20 hours of Zoom and Teams calls or whatever it is. Find time for yourself. Go and have a coffee, go for a walk, go to the shops, play with the dog, whatever it is. And a lot of these things, you think, well, that's time out of the day. They should be working. For someone traditional like myself, it's always a bit, have to have a double take. But actually, you get so much goodwill back, and it actually pays back in terms of performance. Our CEO recently put in some ad hoc appreciation days where the whole company had the day off. And then we had a conniption. Everybody off. Who's going to answer my emails? I'm off as well. Okay, that's all right then. It was absolutely completely sold. I love it. The teams love it. It's every few months. It's still a little bit of a surprise. Before COVID, you would never have done that. Especially as a global corporate of a certain size. So there's things you can be creative about, and sometimes you have to be maybe a little bit bold. Think about the positives. Don't be too worried about, well, actually, is it going to hit productivity in the wrong way? There are things you can do that don't cost you anything, but ultimately give you so much payback in terms of the well-being of your teams.
Yeah, I mean, if you remember at the beginning, I said it's about the cost of living, but because of the cost of living, the impact is not just on finances, but is on well-being. Someone's sent us a little message, which is great, and it says Tech Time Out Tuesday is on Tuesday, the 28th of November this year. Who knew? That's great. I mean, somebody somewhere has thought we should have a day called Tech Day. So Holly will be, I don't know, Holly, are you aware of the Tech Time Out Tuesday, 28th of November day? I mean, you're perhaps doing it every week anyway, but
yeah, I mentioned it earlier because I'm an ambassador for them. So yeah, I encourage everyone to sign up to it.
Excellent.
Yeah. And going back to you, Chris, you're talking about, I mean, everybody's in a WhatsApp group now, and a work WhatsApp group, and therefore, and emails coming in after, it used to be 9 to 5, and that was it, and you'd go home and nobody could get hold of you then, especially on a Friday, until Monday morning. But now it's ping, 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 ping. And that can be really mentally draining. Oh, I better get that. Or, why didn't you answer my WhatsApp last night at 5 to 11? That can be pretty hard, can't it, Chris?
Yeah, it is. And I think, for some of that sort of communications piece and the volume of emails, etc., I guess I almost feel there's a bit of a stick and a carrot. So business leaders, should be quite firm, to their teams about not sending emails at 8 o'clock at night and expecting to get a response 15 minutes later. So there's a little bit of being firm about setting some ground rules. But there's also an element of education. So, for example, personally, I do like to do emails on Sunday to get ahead of the game. Now, my team obviously hate receiving emails from me on a Sunday, because they feel obliged to respond. But, with a bit of education, I didn't realise actually you can create an email and you can delay the send. So I can delay the send, and I used to delay it till Monday mornings. Now I actually delay it to, different emails, throughout the week, so it filters through. So it works for me because I can organise my time, but I'm not then dictating to others and creating a bit of a conflict between how people, keep up their personal and their free time. So sometimes it can be as much education, as much as maybe trying to keep that balance and be firm about the types of culture and ways of working that you're trying to enforce.
Yeah, and I think as well, I come back to Holly, it's about personal attitudes to work as well. I remember the best boss I ever had before I went self-employed understood that I work better in the evening, sometimes after hours, and quite late. I'm definitely an owl at, Sundays, but then sometimes I might want to lie in on a Monday, and if you can't get hold of me, it's because I was working Sunday night. But he just said, if you get the job done and the way you do, I'm not going to make you clock in and clock out like when I first worked in a a factory. And is there any way that you can assess at the early stages when you employ someone and say, how do you work? You know, how do we best get the best out of you? I mean, I've heard people joining the 5 a.m. club. Forget it. There's no way you'd rouse me at 5 a.m. But for some people, they work really well then, don't they? Are you getting that kind of feedback even at interview stage?
Yeah, definitely. And again, because I think we're a digital business and we're employing developers, sometimes they don't like working in the day and they want to be working at night. So we have to balance the needs of the business around that. But we do have international clients. So the people that prefer working later on in the day, will put them on those kind of projects. So it is very much talking and balancing the needs of the business, but also talking to staff about what they want. And, you know, if it doesn't suit them to be here at 9 o'clock and 9:30 is better, then we'll flex the day around them. I did want to just clarify, Helen asked a question about, did I say 15 hours a week? I think I did say that. I meant 15 hours a month in terms of learning. That would be a bit much, wouldn't it?
But a little bit, yeah. That's like a third of their time at work is spent learning. Yeah. So let's just recap. So we did have a little question, a clarification question about hours of study. And it's not 15 hours a week, it's 15 hours a month. Yeah. So and that is around your business needs. I've got a point here. Please do not forget or undervalue the importance of employee assistance programs for access to counselling and other supports for mental health and well-being. Anna, I'll come to you for a while. Does this something that comes up in our surveys?
Sorry, just had technical issues for a second. So that's something that I'll come back to you on, because I don't necessarily, I'm not necessarily involved in the survey program.
Right, okay.
I obviously will always advise members to respond to our surveys, but in terms of the responses, I'm not necessarily part of that.
But so maybe Chris, you've got some experience of, you know, people requesting counselling sessions or, you know, getting support in that way.
Yeah, undoubtedly, and again, we bolted on as part of what we offer, employee assistance types of program, other access to other wellbeing services, and they can take so many different forms. It can be one-to-one counselling. There are some really cool apps nowadays that people can engage with, you know, around the health and well-being. So it's there's no doubt that, you know, I guess I'd say this as a, you know, as a manager, as much as anything else, you know, there are more instances where inevitably people are feeling the pain of cost of living. You know, this is the biggest, you know, inflation rates, interest rates hikes, higher mortgage we've had for years, and that is impacting on mental health. So I think, again, whether you're a large or small company, thinking about what access you can provide to employees is undoubtedly critical. I don't think that's even a nice to have nowadays. That's a must have.
Yeah. Throw this one out, maybe you again, Holly. Now, when people do work from home, is there remember again? I mean, I've slated one of the companies I work for. Please don't look at my LinkedIn and see who they are. Actually, they're not listed. But when I did work from home, I mean, they did give me a sort of a blank check to go and get my office sorted, you know, and off I went to a retailer and got myself an ergonomic chair and all the kit and all of that, and the proper lighting, and that's something, because people will work on the kitchen table, and you know, and you've got to support them with the proper equipment and pay for it, really. And then do you ask for it back if people leave? You know, what's the sort of minefield around that, Holly?
So I wrote a work from home policy because if they're going to work from home, I still am responsible. So exactly what you said, if they need the right chairs, if they need the right monitors and the equipment, we will get all that for them. It still belongs to the company, but we will set up their office from home. And that even includes doing a check of their broadband. Again, I have to check that because I'm a digital business. If they physically can't get a camera and a Teams chat to work and a video to come on, then you know, then unfortunately they can't work from home. So we check everything, but it did mean creating a whole new work from home policy.
And again, I don't know whether this is something you know, whether Anna will know, or Chris, about the company gift. Someone said they thought that a gift to an employee at a taxable implication over and above £50? Do we know what that figure is? Maybe we need to talk to an accountant.
Yeah,
Anybody
so trivial, if you're talking about trivial benefits, yeah, it's exempt tax under, if it's under £50. And there are other slight nuances of what it can and can't be classified as a trivial benefit. But it's something that I would certainly recommend to businesses of any size, to take up, because, often it works well for, simple rewards or recognitions or thank yous, or maybe at Christmas time, to use that £50 where you're not going to attract any tax and you don't have to declare it, as a fairly efficient way of you passing something on. I mean, in our world, we see a lot of people giving a gift cards, because then they're not deciding for the employee what they want. The employee can then take that £50 gift card and decide exactly what they want to spend it on. It's actually, I am finding it very interesting, because if you look in, so we're talking about £50 in England. In Ireland, it's €1,000, and it's so SMBs in Ireland love it. This is a really great mechanic that they can, support their employees, give them something, and actually it ultimately drives footfall into retailers and stuff like that. So if we're talking about lobbying, actually, I would lobby for simplification of the trivial benefit and increasing the value as both good for employers, employees, and the high streets. So that's one for Anna.
Have you noted that, Anna? We've got some work for you to do.
I absolutely will take on that challenge. No problem at all.
Yeah.
And then, this is the beauty of FSB, it's a listening organisation. It depends on the strength of its membership and the things that we say. And of course, there are member benefits. FSB Care, that's one I took up. We talk about well-being. During COVID, I had access to a health professional on the phone who was giving me as much support as I needed, and that was just part of my membership. So it doesn't have to be done through your employer. There are organisations like FSB, of which obviously I'm a member and a big fan, who can also provide those benefits. It's about seeking them out. I don't think we should put all the emphasis on employers. Government has a role, Anna, don't they? FSB certainly can, and there must be many others as well. She's nodding.
Yeah, I'm nod. I agree with everything you've just said.
Yeah.
Obviously I'm biased, but FSB is a fantastic organisation. Yeah. We have a lot of member benefits. As you said, FSB Care, and there's also legal services, insurance services. So, yeah.
Now, we're assuming that everybody's honest and hardworking, Holly, but some people take the mickey a little bit, don't they? Do you ever feel like you have to become undercover boss and actually track what they're doing with their time?
I mean, obviously, you can be Big Brother. You can install things on laptops to track what's happening on that machine, whether it's being turned on or off. So we tend to go down the trust route, and we haven't yet had that issue, touch wood, but I know that it can be an issue. So, yeah, I think it's just building that bond between you and the employees.
Yeah, and someone's asked a question. You don't have to answer this in any actual figure, but do you know how much you spend on the benefits of an individual employee or across the board? Is it a big percentage of your revenue?
Yeah, it's probably higher than normal. And some of the examples I gave earlier, when I said about buying the PlayStation, I didn't mean per person. I meant we asked the staff what they wanted, and we bought the PlayStation for our breakout room. So it wasn't a gift to them, it was a gift to the company. It was what they wanted. But it is definitely something that we track. But I don't have the figures off the top of my head, I'm afraid.
Well, this is, as I said, I've said it a couple of times, music to my ears, because things are changing. Anna, what more can be done at that sort of government level, do you think? You've mentioned a few things around VAT, business rates, being paid on time. That's a big thing, isn't it? Especially for some smaller businesses, you're at the bottom of the chain, aren't you? They're waiting to be paid, and they're waiting to be paid, so you can wait to be paid. But I can't wait, because if I don't get paid, I've got to pack my business in and go and get a job.
Yeah, so just back on late payments. So one of the main things that we actually want the Chancellor Jeremy Hunt to talk about in his autumn statement is really just to renounce late payments from the dispatch box, because we think that that would send such a powerful message to big businesses that don't pay their suppliers on time and don't pay their small firms on time, that this won't be tolerated. So that at the moment that's really what we're calling for.
Brilliant. And I know that we have to keep on top of this. So benefits change all the time, even at FSB, things come, things go, because we're always listening, I hope. And Chris, I assume you're the same, you must be getting different ideas and different requests all the time.
Yeah, most definitely, and I think we're still on a journey, in terms of the economy, how it's impacting our own personal living, and how businesses are reacting. I think one of the points I want to make is that as business leaders or HR professionals, it's not just about coming up with great ideas. It's really about trying to work closely with the teams, with the individuals, to understand what they value and drive engagement and participation. There is a contradiction that sometimes you do need to want to take a horse to water. Is that the right expression for this? You do need to guide. You need to be listening, but also guide people. And I think there was a question there from somebody who said something about to do with mental health and dealing with certain people who maybe don't want to admit they have a mental health issue of various different degrees. And I think that's tough to do, to create the right culture of trust where people are more open to say, I'm struggling, I'm actually working from home, but the kids don't go to school till or come home early, and I'm struggling to balance those things off. So again, there's some hard things that we can try and put in place and leverage, but also having that trust piece is a key one, where the overall work environment or the dynamics of working environments are more complex, so we can listen closely and be more sensitive to the needs of individuals.
Chris, Holly, Anna, we've got sort of a couple of minutes left, so I'm going to whiz round the screen and just get 30 seconds from each of you. If you had one piece of advice around the cost of living, that's where we came in at the beginning. We talked a lot about well-being, but let's talk about cost of living and well-being together. I think the two are inseparable. What would that piece of advice be, Chris?
No one size fits all. If you get whatever you're planning to do, try and find something that enables choice, so staff have the options to pick up on things that are most relevant for them. Right.
And Holly?
I think we've spoken a lot about sort of benefits for the employees, but from a business owner, I haven't got all the answers, and my life isn't perfect, and I still worry and get stressed. So I think my top tip is look after your own well-being, because it's what the cabin crew tell you: put your own mask on first, because if you're healthy and happy, then that will ultimately lead to the business being healthy and happy.
Great advice. And finally, Anna, a piece of advice from yourself.
Sure. So we've spoken a lot about surveys in the session. So mine would be to participate in FSB's Big Voice survey. And that's the program that we use, where we use your insights to influence our policymakers and government. And that will help shape decisions at every level. So please make sure your voice is part of that dialogue.
And that link will be shared with everyone in an email later on. But if you're on social media and you follow FSB, or you don't, follow them on LinkedIn. This link is being shared all the time. It's a chance for you to have your say. People will listen. It will compile into a very powerful report that will be presented. So that's a good thing. So we're almost there. I just want to say, don't forget, check your emails, because any links that we've mentioned or things that we want to follow up on will be in that email, plus a chance to win £150. That'll be included as well. If you haven't joined FSB or would like to know more, there are a lot of free resources on the FSB website. Go to fsb.org.uk. That's right, fsb.org.uk. There, got there then. Chris, where can they go to Blackhawk to find out more?
It'll be on the links along with access to some of the survey stats that we talked about. There's a free ebook that they can read through to give some context for some of the things that we talked about today.
So there you have it, and I think phrase of the day: lots of little frogs going to work. Was Holly? I think that just stuck with me. Is that what you call your staff, little frogs?
Little purple frogs.
Purple frogs.
Very good.
I think people should just follow you on LinkedIn and find out the story of the purple frog. So there you go. An hour is up. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to FSB for putting on this webinar. It is available on Catch Up if you didn't get the whole thing. Stay in touch. Thank you, of course, to Blackhawk, to Chris, to Anna, and to Holly, and to everyone for listening in. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Dave. Thanks, Holly. Thanks, Anna.